I can't live in this limbo anymore. This has been limbo, and it's been too painful.
The camera fades in slowly, the soft hum of ambient sound filling the room. The shot focuses on Christine sitting in her familiar confessional chair, the same backdrop we've seen for years. But this time her expression is different. There's no fire, no forced smile. Her eyes look heavier, as if they're carrying the weight of years of silence. She gazes straight at the camera, swallows hard, and whispers softly, "He was never mine. I see that now. It's not melodramatic. It's not loud, but it's conclusive, and it sends a shiver down everyone's spine." For years, we've seen Christine Brown as the wife who smiled through heartbreak, who kept the peace, who tried to hold the family together while slowly breaking inside. She was the one who believed that love could be built on shared faith, mutual respect, and family unity. But somewhere along the way, that illusion cracked. And in this moment, we're watching it completely collapse. The early years, love built on hope. Christine's tale did not start out with sorrow. When she initially became a member of Kody's plural marriage, she actually believed in the concept of family. To her, plural marriage wasn't competition. It was community. She envisioned it as a means to bring up kids in a house filled with love, laughter, and common strength. Christine was glowing back then, young, optimistic, and seriously devoted. She loved Kody, and for many years she thought he loved her too. He was charismatic, enthusiastic, with ideas about oneness and fate. He talked about family as a calling, a mission from God, and Christine, in her trusting heart, took it all in. She was the spiritual wife, the one who warmed the home, cooked the meals, watched the kids. Kody appreciated it for that, or so she believed. He referred to her as nurturing. He said she was the glue. But with the passing years and new faces in the equation, those words began to ring more like titles than affection. Christine craved partnership. Kody craved obedience, and that distinction, even invisible at first, started to form the cracks which would eventually splinter them apart. The slow shift, a love that started to fade. The first actual indications of space crept in silently, and that is how they usually do. Not a fight, nor even an argument. Just a glance. Christine saw that as she spoke, Kody's eyes began to wander off in other directions. Distracted, disconnected. She blamed herself first. Perhaps she was not exciting enough. Perhaps she lost her spark. Perhaps third wife implied something unspoken, that her moment in the limelight was gone. But inside she knew. She could sense it in the little things. The way Kody stayed longer at Robin's place, the way his laughter was more booming there, the way his tolerance with her had disappeared altogether. There was a night, one that she would never forget. She remembered sitting at the kitchen table once the children had been asleep, waiting for him to return. The clock marked time past midnight. The house was quiet, but for the hum of the refrigerator and the soft wind caressing the window. When Kody finally entered, he did not look at her. He strode past her as if she was not there. Christine softly said, "Did you eat?" He nodded. "Yeah, Robin cooked supper." That simple sentence, those 4 words, shattered something within her. It wasn't about the meal. It was about belonging. She had created her life around a man who no longer acknowledged her as part of his life. Unseen tears, the hidden years of loneliness. Christine mastered the art of faking it. She smiled on camera, she laughed with the children, she maintained the facade of a perfect sister wife. But when the cameras went off, she was by herself. She'd climb into bed quietly, on her side of the bed, gazing at the wall, hearing the far-off vibration of her phone with messages from the other wives. She wouldn't even open them. She didn't want to see their family gatherings, the arrangements that Kody made without her. There were moments she would stand at the window, looking out over the dark streets of Flagstaff, whispering to herself, "You're still part of this family. You're still loved." But every night that whisper grew weaker. The emotional distance became physical. Kody no longer visited her house as frequently. Weeks became months, months became weeks. When he did visit, it was all businesslike. Conversations about the children, business details, finances. Never intimacy, never love. Christine started keeping a journal. In one of them, she wrote, "It's like being married to a ghost. He is alive, but not with me. His heart is elsewhere, and I find myself wondering over and over again, what did I do wrong?" She hadn't done anything wrong. She was simply attempting to grasp hold of something that no longer existed. The turning point. A conversation that changed everything. There was a day, one of the cold ones early in winter, when Christine had at last made up her mind to ask the question she'd been putting off for years. They sat at the dining table. The children had gone off to school. The morning sun shone through the window, casting gentle stripes across the wood. Christine breathed deeply and said, "Do you still love me?" Kody didn't answer right away. He rubbed his temples, sighed, and finally said, "I love you, but I'm not in love with you." It was the kind of truth that didn't need shouting. It was soft, but it cut deeper than any argument ever could. Christine did not cry at the time. She merely nodded. She stood up, went to the kitchen sink, and began washing dishes that were not dirty. Water ran for a very long while. Later that evening, when the house was asleep, she cried, not for the man she would lose, but for the years she had wasted attempting to be enough. The public image versus the private pain on film, Kody and Christine played their parts. They shot family meals, planning sessions, Coyote Pass discussions. They grinned when the producers called action, and grew icy when they yelled cut. Viewers sensed the tension. They saw how Kody would sit farther away from Christine, how his voice towards her had shifted, condescending, abrupt, sometimes even cruel. Christine told one of her friends off camera, "It's hard to act like we're a family when we're strangers in real life." Behind the polished scenes, the emotional neglect grew unbearable. Kody would talk about unity, about the family mission. But when Christine asked for one-on-one time, he would say, "We're not there right now. I'm focused on the bigger picture." The bigger picture. Those words haunted her. Because in that bigger picture, she was fading, becoming background. The seeds of independence. Something was starting to change inside Christine. It wasn't abrupt. It was gradual, like a sunrise creeping through fog. She was aware that she had been waiting for permission. Permission to be loved, to be happy, to move on. But no permission was coming from anyone. She needed to take it upon herself. She began looking at her own life, her children, her happiness, her peace. She started envisioning life without Kody. It was scary, but for the first time in years, it was possible. She found herself smiling again, not for the cameras, not for the family, but for herself. As the first half of this emotional process ends, the camera backs up again to Christine's face in her confession. The same gentle lighting, the same oppressive quiet. She stares directly at the camera and speaks barely above a whisper as if to herself, "He was never mine to lose. I just didn't know it then." The screen goes black. It is early morning. The window light is pale, soft, almost tentative, like the start of something that isn't yet sure it should be happening at all. Christine sits at her kitchen table, coffee unmoved, eyes gazing at the steam rising from the mug. She is tranquil, but thoughts are racing. This is the same table on which so many of her aspirations first took flight, and on which, year by year, they gradually withered away. The children are sleeping. The house is still with the exception of an occasional creak from the floorboards. These are the moments she used to enjoy. The pre-dawn quiet before the day got underway. The short stillness before she became mom, wife, peacemaker. But now, that stillness weighs more. It's not quiet. It's isolated. She can't stop thinking of last night. That point in time when Kody informed her he wasn't in love with her anymore. The words echo in her mind like a broken melody. "I love you, but I'm not in love with you." She said it out loud to herself a dozen times now, attempting to find something within it. Some secret meaning, some means of making it not be so final. But it's nothing. It's hollow, like she is inside. Christine grabs her phone. There's a text from Janelle. "You okay?" It's concise, unadorned, but full of everything they both know but can't say aloud. She responds with, "Yeah, just thinking." Janelle doesn't press. She never does. That's one of the things Christine loves about her. She listens without needing to repair things. She puts down the phone and takes a deep breath. It's been years since she felt truly seen, and for a long time, she thought that was normal. That's what plural marriage was supposed to be. Sacrifice, compromise, faith in something bigger than yourself. She told herself that over and over again, every time she felt invisible. You're doing this for God. You're doing this for the family. You're doing this for the kids. But now she can't help but wonder if perhaps those weren't realities. Perhaps they were deceptions she perpetuated upon herself because the reality had been so difficult to confront. The reality? That she remained out of fear of solitude. That she lied to herself that Kody would return to her. That if she loved harder, worked harder, smiled longer, perhaps he'd return to her. That deception held her for so long. She recalls the first few seasons of their marriage, when things weren't perfect but they were full of possibility. When Kody would take her hand and speak of their dream property, their expanding family, their religious faith. When he used to look at her like she was vital, like she counted. That expression eroded gradually, gave way to something colder, more distant, more distracted. When Robin entered the family, everything changed. Christine reassured herself it was okay. That was the plural marriage principle. Love was to multiply, not divide. But what if it doesn't? What if the math doesn't add up? If love is a pie with fewer slices and she ends up with crumbs? Christine never resented Robin. That's what people don't understand. It wasn't about jealousy. It was about honesty. Kody changed after Robin came. He was different, softer with her, more patient, more romantic. He gave her things Christine didn't even know were missing until she saw them in someone else's hands. A gentle touch on the shoulder. Flowers on her birthday. Simple words like, "You're beautiful." She realized he had never said that to her in years. There was a day. Christine recalls it like it was yesterday. They were all sitting down to a family dinner, cameras in hand. Kody was laughing at something Robin had said, reached out and touched her hand, looked at her like she was the only one in the room. Christine saw it out of the corner of her eye, and something inside her broke. It wasn't anger. It was sadness. Because in that moment, she witnessed what love was supposed to be. And it wasn't what she had. When the cameras were turned off, Christine walked into the kitchen to clean up, acting as if everything was all right. Robin entered to assist, smiling cordially. "You okay?" Christine smiled, replied, "Of course." A lie. One of the many she spoke, to Robin, to Kody, to herself. That evening, when she climbed into bed, Kody was already lying on the couch sleeping. He had begun doing that more regularly. Initially, he claimed it was because the kids were ill or because he had early calls for work, but she knew. It wasn't about schedules. It was about avoidance. He didn't wish to be there anymore, and she couldn't bring herself to acknowledge it. So she continued to live in the deception that she was still wanted, still loved, still chosen. The deception that their marriage was just going through a phase. It was easier to hold on to that than to accept the truth that her husband had already emotionally abandoned her before he ever physically would. Months went by, and Christine was more isolated than ever before. The family was coming apart. Coyote Pass, which had been the dream meant to unite them all, had become a representation of fragmentation. They argued about money, about land, about leadership. Every fight ended with Kody yelling, blaming her for not being loyal, for not being spiritually aligned. She began to see a trend. Whenever she differed with him, he would label it as disloyalty. Whenever she asked for affection, he'd accuse her of being dramatic. Whenever she attempted to discuss her feelings, he'd tell her she was making it about herself. It felt like emotional quicksand. The more she attempted to pull herself up, the deeper she went. Then there was the night that changed everything, a battle that wasn't meant to erupt before the cameras. It began over something minor, a scheduling conflict, something regarding who Kody would hang out with that week. Christine requested her evening, and Kody told her he couldn't. His voice was biting, abrupt. She asked him why, and he snapped. You don't deserve it right now. Those words reverberated in her mind for a very long time after he was gone. You don't deserve it. She sat, quietly absorbing the hurt of those words into her chest. How do you get over that? How do you combat someone who's determined you're no longer worth their while? That's when she understood. She wasn't battling for love anymore. She was battling for shreds of dignity. In her following confession, Christine attempted to keep it together, but her eyes gave her away. She whispered, I don't think he sees me as a wife anymore. I think he sees me as a burden. The producers sat quietly. They had no idea what to say. It was one of the few moments when the narrative ceased to be entertainment and became reality, painfully, humanly real. After shooting, one of the crewmen confronted her and asked, Are you okay? Christine smiled, that same weary smile, and replied, I'm fine. I've been fine for a long time. Another falsehood. The following morning, she drove out to Coyote Pass by herself. It was cold, blustery, the sky gray with snow potential. She pulled in and got out of her car, gazing at the barren land, acres of earth and possibilities that would never be realized. She remained there for what felt like an eternity, the wind smacking her hair against her face, and breathed softly into the open air. I don't think I want to live like this anymore. It wasn't a proclamation. It was an awareness, silent but irrevocable. Something in her moved that day. She wasn't yet free, but she was waking up. That night, she cooked dinner for the children, smiled at their jokes, and acted as if everything was fine. But for the first time in years, she did not pray that Kody would return home. She prayed for strength. Strength to no longer lie to herself. Strength to confront reality. Strength to let go at last. As part 2 comes to a close, we are back in the confessional. Christine remains silent for a brief moment before she speaks. She speaks in a low, even but sad tone. I waited for him to select me, but he never did. I kept thinking he would, that one day he'd recall the woman who had faith in him, who loved him when no one else would. But that day never arrived. The truth is, I was never actually his choice. I was merely a piece of the puzzle he wanted the world to see. She stops, glances down, and brushes a tear away from her cheek. I think I stayed because I didn't want to admit that love isn't always enough. That sometimes you can love someone with everything you have, and they'll still choose someone else. The camera remains on her face for a long time. No words, no music, just silence and the soft sound of her breathing. The rain against glass is calm and gentle, the sort of rain that blurs everything: streets, windows, faces. In a home that used to feel crowded, Christine sits in her living room, the camera crew working quietly in front of her. It's a familiar process by now, the lights, the mics, the soft hum of equipment. But today everything seems different. The air is heavier, thicker. You can almost feel something about to shatter. Christine leans back in her chair, her hands clasped on her lap. Her face is serene, but her eyes reveal her. There is weariness there, the kind that results from insufficient sleep, but from decades of burdened hearts. Kody enters. Wet hair from the rain, jaw clenched, quick and agitated steps. He doesn't say hello to her. He doesn't even glance at her. The crew looks at one another. They've been here before. The charged silence before a dialogue that's going to become something raw and hurtful. The director hums softly. Cameras roll. Kody sits across from Christine. He leans back, crosses his arms, and sighs like he's already annoyed. So, he says, his tone clipped, I heard you've been talking to the kids about leaving. Christine blinks once slowly. They asked me what's happening, Kody. I'm not lying to them. He leans forward, his voice rising. You shouldn't be putting ideas in their heads. You're making me look like the bad guy here. She stares at him a long time. You don't have to resort to making you sound like the villain. You're managing to do that on your own just fine. There is a silence, one of those silences that seems to drag on. The crew doesn't have the nerve to move. Kody's expression sets. You're being too dramatic again, he grumbles. Christine laughs, but it's not funny. Dramatic? I've kept quiet for years, Kody. I've bitten my tongue, smiled for the cameras, and acted as if all was well. You call that dramatic? He glances off, his tone softer now. I'm just trying to keep this family together. Christine shakes her head. No, you're trying to control what's left of it. For an instant, all you hear is the rain. It pounds the windows louder, a repeat of the tempest within that room. This wasn't meant to occur on tape. They were meant to talk about logistics, next week's shooting plans, perhaps exchange news about the kids. But the tension between them has been smoldering for months, and now it's erupting. The cameras just keep rolling because they know this is history in the making. Christine's eyes begin to brim. She takes a trembling breath, then whispers quietly, You said you loved me once. Remember that? Kody doesn't reply. He looks down at the floor, his fingers drumming on the arm of the chair. She goes on, her voice shaking. You said I was your partner. You said we'd grow old together. But at some point I became a burden. You look at me now and see a burden, not a wife. He glances up, anger crossing his face. That's not fair. Christine wipes away her tears. What's right, Kody? Is it right that I spent years raising your children while you started anew elsewhere? Is it right that I pleaded for time, for touch, for affection, and you denied me? You led me to believe I was the issue. But the reality is, you gave up a long time ago. The sentences linger in the air, heavy and biting. Kody rubs his temples, grumbling something about how this is all being taken out of context. But the cameras don't lie. Every feeling, every tear, every flash of anger. It's all there, immortalized. In her confessional later that day, Christine sits in the same chair, her makeup smudged from crying. Her hands crumple nervously in her lap. They say the camera doesn't lie, she murmurs. And I suppose that's so. Because when I see him speaking to me now, I don't see love. I see disdain. I see someone who's just waiting for me to quit so he doesn't have to be the one to break it. She pauses, her voice cracking slightly. But I won't give him that satisfaction. I won't let him say he left me. I'm the one who's walking away this time. When shooting ceased for the day, the crew remained silent. No one wished to make the first move. Christine thanked them gently, her words weary but genuine. Kody stomped out before anyone could utter a single word. The tension persisted even after he had departed. It clung to the walls like smoke. One of the cameramen after the event said it was the most difficult day he'd ever shot. Not due to screaming and chaos, but because of the quiet afterwards. That quiet spoke volumes. The breaking of something that had been brittle for years but finally snapped. Christine sat on her porch, covered with a blanket, the rain having passed but the air remaining damp and heavy. She listened as droplets fell along the railing, her thoughts going back over every word that was spoken in advance. She recalled the last time she saw him cry. Years ago, when one of the children fell and got hurt. Held them close, his eyes brimming with tears, whispering reassurances. She had loved him so much then. That was the man she believed she married. The man who could love intensely, feel deeply. That man she had not seen in years. She breathed into the darkness. Where did you go, Kody? But she knew in her heart already. He hadn't left. He had just changed, and so had she. The following morning, Christine awoke at dawn. She entered the kitchen, made coffee, and stood at the window observing the light move over the horizon. It was silent, serene in a manner she had not experienced in some time. No tension filled the house, no waiting for footsteps, no pretense. Just silence and the constant beat of her own breathing. She grabbed her phone and texted the producer. I need to do another confessional. There's something I want to say. When she sat down afterwards in the afternoon, the crew could feel the change in her vibe. She seemed lighter yet stronger. She smiled weakly before she began to speak. I think all people are constantly asking how I'm doing, hoping that I will respond that I'm broken. But I'm not. I'm sad, yes. I'm mourning what might have been. But for the first time in a very long time, I feel like I'm finally telling the truth. And the truth feels like freedom. The scene that wound up in the episode was not supposed to be shot. It was rough, off the cuff, and raw, but it was also the moment that would never be forgotten by the fans. The moment when Christine finally ceased to be silent. The editors discussed whether or not to keep it. It was dramatic, perhaps too dramatic. But they decided to leave it in. Because it wasn't drama at all. It was life. It was a woman finally standing up and saying, "Enough." When the show was aired, the internet went crazy. Fans were posting all over social media that they thought Christine was brave, tough, inspiring. But what they didn't realize was that behind that toughness was still a woman sitting home alone at night, quietly weeping because the life she'd worked for decades was taken from her. But she wasn't weeping with regret. She was weeping because she was finally free enough to feel all that she had been holding inside. In her last line of the day's confession, Christine gazes directly at the camera and whispers, "You can't edit the truth. You can't hide what's real. I tried to, for years, but the camera saw me, and maybe for the first time I saw me too." She smiles slightly through tears. The morning following that in-your-face on-camera fight, everything in Christine's place seemed abnormally quiet. Even the air felt hollow, the sort that descends when something is irrevocable. Sunlight streamed in through the blinds, golden and warm, but Christine hardly noticed. She perched at the end of her bed, fingers clasped together, staring blankly at the floor. She wasn't furious anymore. She wasn't even sad in the same manner. She was empty, but within the emptiness, something new was emerging. Determination. There is a moment when silence ceases to be acquiescence and becomes power. That was where she was at the moment. For years, Christine had pleaded to be heard. She wept, she begged. She attempted every manner possible to get the attention of the man she had once held dear. But Kody had erected barriers that no love could demolish. He had opted for distance, opted for pride, opted for someone else. So now she was opting for herself. The children had begun to sense it too. They sensed it even when no one mentioned it. The laughter that once filled the home was now less frequent, interrupted by stilted silences and insincere smiles. Truly, the youngest had already begun to ask questions that pierced deeper than any grown-up could endure. "Mom, why doesn't Dad live here anymore?" Christine would swallow hard, trying to keep her voice even. "Dad's busy, sweetheart. He's got a lot on his mind at the moment." But even as she spoke, she felt the lie working on her insides. Truly was intelligent, too intelligent for her years. One evening, Christine tucked her into bed and the little girl whispered, "He loves Robin's children more, doesn't he?" Christine stiffened. The words were tiny, but they landed with the force of thunder. She sat next to her daughter, smoothing a wisp of hair from her forehead. "No, honey," she murmured. "He just expresses it in different ways." But inside, she didn't think so. And worse, truly didn't either. When Christine left her bedroom that evening, she cried. Not from Kody's abandonment, but from seeing what it was doing to their kids. They weren't losing a dad. They were learning what conditional love was. A week passed, then Kody arrived. No forewarning, no phone call. Just appeared at the door with that same cold arrogance he always possessed. He didn't visit to make amends. Christine understood that even before he said anything. He arrived to discuss logistics, possessions, and dollars, as if love were something that could be specified on paper. They sat facing each other at the kitchen table, the same table where their marriage had been quietly disintegrating. The cameras weren't there this time, but the tension between them communicated more than any scene ever could. Kody started discussing Coyote Pass, ownership and responsibilities, how she had to think rationally. His tone was cutting, irritable, almost lectures. Christine remained silent for a very long time. When she finally spoke, her tone was soft but firm. "You go on and on about property, Kody. You speak about logic and fairness. But where was the fairness when I was single in this house for months? Where was the logic when you concluded that my feelings no longer counted?" He shifted with discomfort. "You're distorting things. You're being emotional once again." Christine leaned forward, gaze unyielding. "Of course I'm upset. I've given you 30 years of my life. I've raised your children. I believed in you even when you lost faith in us. And now you want to discuss money. Fine, let's discuss it, because that's all you have left to use against me." Her voice didn't rise. It didn't have to. Every word hit like a soft truth. the kind that doesn't leave space for debate. Kody got to his feet, angry. "I cannot communicate with you when you are this way." She gazed up at him. "You mean honest?" He didn't respond. He spun around, grumbled something about needing to be alone, and went out. The slam of the door resounded through the house like a period at the end of an extremely long sentence. Christine stayed up that evening on the porch, huddled in a blanket, gazing up at the stars. The air was crisp, the kind that nips just hard enough to remind you that you're still breathing. She remembered it all, the years of joy, the children, the faith, the vision of eternal family. She remembered how Kody used to take her hand during prayer, how she had once felt that their love had been blessed. And now, here she was, solitary beneath the same sky that had once seemed so sacred. But this time the silence wasn't empty. It was liberating. She spoke softly to herself. "You can't repair someone who doesn't know they're broken." She said it out loud for the first time. And for the first time in years, she felt it sink into her chest, not like hurt, but like truth. The next few days were subdued. Kody didn't call. The other wives didn't come by. Even Robin's efforts at checking in sounded forced and scripted. But Christine didn't care. The loneliness that frightened her before now felt like peace. She began to find herself again in tiny ways, making her own favorite dinners, sitting on the porch with music drifting from the stereo, laughing with her daughters. There was still pain, yes, but beneath it was something she hadn't experienced in years: self-worth. She understood that she did not need to be chosen to be worthy. She did not need approval from Kody to be fully herself. She spent the afternoon going through boxes in her closet, and in one of them she discovered an old family photograph. All smiling faces, the children still little, Kody's arm across her shoulders. It was taken at a moment when everything appeared perfect on the outside. She looked at the photo for a long time before putting it in a box marked past. Next, she wrote on another box, future. A few days afterward, she had a confessional interview arranged. The crew could sense that something was different when she entered. There was a stability in her stance, a serene resilience in her face. The producer inquired softly, "Christine, what happened?" She smiled weakly. "I stopped waiting for someone to save me." The producer nodded, allowing her to go on. Christine stared straight into the camera. "I waited for years thinking that if I was just patient enough, loving enough, obedient enough, that he would return. That he'd remember why we began this family in the first place. But you can't make a person see you. You can't beg someone to care." She stopped, tears welling up. "The breaking point wasn't when he lost his love for me. It was when I lost my love for myself." Following the confessional, she lingered in the studio longer than she normally would, simply sitting there in silence. The lights remained on, but the cameras were off. It was that kind of moment where time seems to hang in the balance, where you sense something huge has moved within you. Christine whispered almost to herself, "I think I'm ready to go." One of the crew members heard her and asked gently, "Go where?" She smiled softly. "Anywhere but here." That night she made a list. It wasn't long or complicated, just a few simple things. Tell the kids the truth. Find a new home. Be happy. It was the first time in her life that happiness was something she allowed herself to put on paper. When she finished typing, she leaned back and exhaled slowly. For so long, she had been scared that ending it would be a failure. Now, though, she realized, staying in something that's draining your soul is the actual failure. Quitting is bravery. The following morning, she packed a box. Not all of it, just enough to begin anew. She did not tell anyone, not yet. But deep inside, she knew the choice was made. The moment of breaking point had already passed. It was simply a matter of living up to it. She remained by the window one final time, gazing out at the land that should have brought their family together. It was lovely, expansive, barren, fertile. But it wasn't hers any longer. It never was, really. She spoke softly. Goodbye. Her voice didn't shake. There were no tears this time. There was only peace. The camera dissolves on that image. Christine in the gentle morning light, surrounded by half-packed boxes, a soft smile on her face. The sound of a solitary heartbeat sounds softly in the background before growing silent. The house is silent, too silent. Christine stands in the center of her living room, the weak morning light spilling onto the floorboards. Half her possessions are packed. Boxes stand stacked tidily by the door. Not too many, not too few. Just enough for a fresh start. The coffee machine buzzes gently on the counter, but she's not drinking it. She's waiting. She knows Kody's on his way. He texted her last night. "We need to talk." She didn't respond. What was there left to say? Nevertheless, he's coming. Not because he needs to comprehend, but because he needs to control. That's who he's always been. Christine glances around the house one last time. Each corner reminds her of something. Birthday cakes, laughing, crying, the pitter-patter of children running through the halls. For years, this was her reality. Now it's nothing but walls and silence. A clean, firm, familiar knock comes at the door. She breathes in and opens it. Kody stands there, his face drawn, his posture rigid. He looks tired, maybe even afraid, though he'd never admit it. His eyes dart to the boxes behind her, and for the first time in a long time, he looks unsure. "So it's true," he says flatly. "You're really doing this." Christine nods. "I am." He steps inside, glancing around like a stranger in his own life. The silence stretches between them. "Why now?" he demands. "After all of this, why give up?" She looks him in the eye. "Because I finally figured out I'm not giving up. I'm letting go." Kody scoffs, but it's weak, as if even he doesn't believe his own justification anymore. "You're being emotional again, Christine. You're not thinking clearly." Her tone is peaceful, but firm. "No, Kody. For the first time in my life, I'm thinking straight. I've spent years asking for your time, your love, your respect. I stopped asking for affection, just wanted kindness. But you couldn't even offer me that." He shifts uncomfortably. "You're rewriting history." "I loved you." Christine's eyes sparkle, but she doesn't weep. "No. You loved the version of me that needed you. The one who remained silent, who never challenged you. You loved my loyalty, not my heart." The words land like a gentle explosion. Kody tries to say something, but nothing happens. His face contorts, his jaw clenching in a desperate effort to contain something. Anger, guilt, perhaps regret. But it's too late for all of it. The air is thick as if the house itself is overhearing. Christine moves toward the window, gazing out at the property that was to be their future. Coyote Pass, hollow and still, dirt and dreams. "This was going to bring us closer," she says softly. "But all it did was remind me how far we are from each other." Kody's standing behind her, his image pale in the glass. "You really think walking out is going to solve anything? You'll come to regret this." Christine turns, her face tranquil but intense. "No, Kody. What I'll come to regret is thinking staying would make a difference. No yelling, no drama. Just truth. Heavy, plain, irreparable." The camera, unshown, is present. The crew is aware that this is it. The conclusion to the story they have been shooting for more than a decade. No one utters a word. The quiet is holy. Kody glances at the boxes once more. "You're really leaving behind all we created." Christine leans in at the angle. "What did we construct, Kody? A pretend family? A guilt-ridden marriage? I'm not leaving something intact. I'm abandoning something already broken." Kody's control breaks. His voice becomes shrill now. "And what about the kids? What are you going to say to them? That their mom just walked out?" That's when Christine's calm breaks, just a little. Her voice trembles, but the fire in her eyes burns through. "No, I'll tell them their mother finally stood up for herself. That she refused to live unloved. I'll tell them that peace is worth walking away for." For a moment, Kody remains silent. He simply looks at her, and for the first time ever, there's no wrath, only terror. Terror of being left behind. Terror of losing the last vestige of control he'd ever had. "You can't take back what's been done," he whispers. "I don't want to," she says. A vehicle comes into the driveway out front, Janelle's. She had said she would come to assist with the move. Christine looks out the window and sees her old friend emerge, her expression brimming with silent comprehension. Kody spots her as well. So that's it? You and Janelle ganging up on me? Christine lightly shakes her head. No, Kody, it's not about you anymore. The tone of those words, not about you anymore, seems to reverberate in the air long after they're said. He shoves a hand through his hair, grumbling, "You'll regret this. You'll see what it's like when the cameras stop rolling." When no one's around to take your side, Christine steps closer. Her voice is even but trembling with feeling. "I already know what it's like to be alone, Kody. I've been that way for years, even when you were sitting right beside me." He doesn't respond. He can't. Janelle knocks slightly before coming in, feeling the tension but not speaking. Christine flashed her a small, grateful smile. She then turns back to Kody for the last time. "This is it," she whispers. "You keep the land. You keep your pride. I'm keeping my peace." He stares at her as if he doesn't know who she is, and perhaps he doesn't. Christine moves away from him towards the door. She places her hand on the knob, but before she opens it, she utters a final sentence, her voice hardly above a whisper. "You've always claimed to be the head of this family, but a true head of state doesn't let his people die of hunger, and I've been hungry for years." She pushes the door open. The light from outside pours in, warm and bright. The camera lingers on Kody's face. He stands there in the darkness of the house alone. The muted sound of boxes being removed can be heard faintly in the distance. He seems lost, not angry anymore, not even defiant. Just vacant. He mutters to himself inaudibly, "She'll be back. She always comes back." But he knows in his heart that she won't. Outside, Christine breathes deeply. The sky stretches out wide and wide, the sort of sky that leaves you small and boundless all at the same time. She gazes out across the horizon. Fresh starts just out of reach beyond the limits of everything she has ever known. Janelle puts a hand on her shoulder. "Ready?" Christine nods. "Yes," she whispers. "I've been ready for a very long time." They put the final box into the car. Christine steps inside but turns and glances back at the house before slamming the door shut behind her. Her eyes shine, but she's smiling. Not with happiness, but with relief. "Goodbye," she whispers. The door closes. The engine roars. The car glides away. Inside, Kody paces to the window, seeing the car recede down the road. His face glares back at him, older, lonelier, and finally understanding that this time, it really is over. He punches his hand against the frame of the window in frustration, breaking the silence. "You can't just wipe me out, Christine." He shouts at no one, and the only answer is the soft receding sound of tires on gravel growing fainter in the distance. He slumps into the closest chair, panting, fingers clenched around his knees. The house groans. The camera rests on him unblinking. The former proud patriarch amidst space, the echo of his own decisions. And then a knock. He glances up, surprised. Another knock, louder this time. Fade out, no music, only silence, and one question lingering in the air. Who's knocking on Kody's door?